Welcome to season 2 of the Born and Bred podcast.
In this season, we get chatting to some of Northern Ireland's sporting heroes.
Hello and welcome to another episode of season 2 of the Born and Bred podcast. Today's guest is a European world champion and an Olympic champion. We're delighted to have Michael McKillop with us today. Hello, Michael.
Thank you for having me here.
Thanks for coming on our little podcast.
I know.
Yeah, a podcast that I will openly admit I never heard of, and I'm very glad that I got the opportunity to connect with you guys on social media, and it's now happening. So it just goes to show the power of sport within the Northern Ireland community.
Yeah, well, we've obviously we've kicked off season 2. We're getting on many sports people from Northern Ireland just to find out, obviously, you know, your born and bred story, where you come from, and you know, talking about your success and stuff. So to kick us off, tell us about yourself, where you come from.
I'm originally born and bred in Cushendall in the north coast of Antrim. So that was kind of the first couple of years of my life, and that was kind of really where I was kind of, my life started in a way, because obviously being diagnosed with my disability, for anyone that doesn't know, I have a disability called cerebral palsy, and it affects my right side, but it was 2 years and 10 months when I got diagnosed. So I was already in Cushendall at that time whenever I got diagnosed. So I always feel like a part of my life began when I got that diagnosis, because up until then I was just walking around with a limp and not really using my right hand. And that's why my parents just seen it, because the doctors at the time, at 1 year and 10 months, whenever my parents really went to them and said, there's something not right with Michael. But the doctors just said, oh, it's a habit. It's like he's seen it on TV or he's seen it. But it wasn't until 2 years and 10 months where my parents got the answers that they needed in a way. And kind of, I always say, and whenever I talk about it, it's about acceptance. And I think that was where my parents accepted who I was as a disabled boy, not an able-bodied boy. And that's kind of where I would always say my life started, really.
And were you an only child, or did you have
No, so I
siblings?
have 2 older sisters and 1 younger sister, and that was kind of a thing growing up as well. Like, obviously I was in need of more support and guidance because of my disability. So my 2 older sisters kind of played a back part in the early years of my life. But I think, as everyone will admit, parents are a massive contributing factor, or loved ones, to help and guide you. And I think for me personally, with growing up with the condition, and my sisters around me, they didn't give me oh, poor wee Michael, he's got a disability, we have to look after him. It's kind of like, get on with it. And that's the attitude that, if I'm lucky enough or blessed enough to have kids, that's the attitude I would like to have. I would never want anyone to see someone's just feel sorry for me. And that's definitely what my parents has always instilled in me. It's just like, get up again. If you fall over, keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And eventually it'll stick. And thankfully I did. And I'm able to come and talk to you guys and talk about my story about it.
Yeah. And so did you stay in Cushendall then, or I take it you moved?
Yeah,
then?
we moved. So my father, he's a PE teacher, or a retired PE teacher now, but he was PE teaching in Cushendall itself, the small town. But obviously the only job that he wanted to go back to Belfast was to go to Smalachy's College, and that's where he went. It just so happened it turned up. My grandfather had passed away kind of 2 months earlier, and he was never going to leave Cushendall really, and it just so happened it came up, and that was his dream job, and he went back there. And so I roughly my whole life was growing up in near Sandyknows, in Glengormley, not the most exotic place in the world, but I'm sure some of
Not
the
as
followers.
exotic as Cushendall.
No, not really. You're beside the sea, and then you're actually beside a big massive roundabout. So it's not the most glamorous place. But for me, that's kind of where my love of running really took off. Like Sandyknows Park as such now, I think of it as kind of like my first real experience. I have my first ever pair of spikes, which are like this size, that I got to try it on the grass, and it's something I feel really funny looking back at it now. That's where my real running journey began, because I was dragged to every race that my dad did. It didn't matter where it was in the country, it was all about running. And my mum was a runner as well, and my older sister kind of got into running. So it was like, oh, I kind of want to do that. Even though I played loads of different sports as well growing up, and And that was the one thing as well my parents wanted me to do, was experience lots of different things, because the fundamental movements for me, well, for any child is important, but for me as someone that has an impairment on my right side, the fundamental use of my right hand, it's not there, but they were doing every single thing impossible to allow me to have some sort of functioning. And then eventually it just got into football, it got into Gaelic, then it got into running, and then and so happened that was the one sport that I wanted to stick with, because I could see an avenue, I could see somewhere where I was going to be talented enough and good enough from a young age, that I had never considered disability or Paralympic sport or disabled sport in any shape or form, because I competed able-bodied my whole life. And I didn't see myself as anything any way different. And it was like, if I ever won the starting line, I want to win. There's no, I would always say to people, like, I never came on the starting line and go, oh well, if I came sixth, I'm the first disabled child. I would never have thought like that. Some people may think like that, but if I was sixth, I was sixth, and there was no excuses. And the same way to anyone that says, oh, I just got the starting line and competed, but didn't go my way. And I'm just like, well, don't use an injury as an excuse or anything. If you toe the line of any race or anything like that,
It's fair game.
That's for a game. That what happens, and you deserve what you get. It's a bit harsh, but that's my mental mindset I have on it. So yeah, like growing up with that mentality, it's allowed me to excel at a high level, but also give me a good perspective on life and what it actually takes to toe the line in life, because there's so many things that doesn't go your way, and I guess one of the things that people would look at as a negative is my disability, but if I didn't have a disability, I wouldn't be talking to you. No, that's a realistic thing. If it wasn't for my disability, I wouldn't have competed for my country. I could be working behind a desk doing something that I wouldn't like to do naturally for me now personally, but if it wasn't for that disability, I wouldn't have the experiences of my life.
So in terms of running then, at what age, you said your parents, they did running. So is that how you obviously got into it? And
yeah, my mum, she was all Ireland champion under 18, and then when she was 18, she competed in the first ever Belfast Marathon and finished fourth when she was 18. So obviously the standard at that time wasn't as good. Sorry, Mum. But
Have you ever told her that?
yes, of course.
we'll clip that one.
Of course. But the thing with it was like I said, you only turn up and you beat who's there.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter of who it is, as long as you perform. And yeah, like my dad won All Ireland cross country and track events as well, but he went to university and came out with a university degree and 2 children and a half. So in terms of his running, it shrinked and didn't allow that to kind of excel to the next level.
Yeah.
So from a very young age, it was like, right, he's got a family, he has to take care of his family, and that was and obviously a disabled child as well that spent a little bit more time. So at a young age, he went into coaching then. He's seen the next part of his life, and that's kind of who's looked after me my whole career.
And in terms then of, the running, is it something that you enjoyed at a young age more so than the other sports?
Yeah, I think I'm a massive football fan off the pitch. I wasn't very. I played football. I love football, but I wasn't very good at it. If I will blame it, even though you think to yourself you're like Ronaldinho on the pitch, but realistically you're not. And the one thing that from a very young age was I could run. I know it sounds stupid saying, a lot of kids, oh well, I can run, but I just understood the breathe, and I understood the concept of digging a hole for yourself and running as hard as you can into it, and that was my mentality. And I didn't feel disappointed if I obviously I look at it in a way, if I didn't finish first, I would be frustrated, but it was a learning curve in a way. And obviously growing up, looking at the negatives of youth sport, because of my condition, I got to about the age of 11, 12 competing in able-bodied sport, and my disability didn't really play a part. But I was a slow developer, slow to grow, slow to develop. My muscles are affected naturally. So from like the ages of 12 to like 16, I went from being first to like last.
Okay.
And it's like any child, I guess, in P7, it's like puberty or whatever, or anything like that. It's like kids can drop out of sport because they feel disheartened or because everyone's bigger and stronger than them. But because I think I loved the sport and it was in my family, that was what kept me going. But then obviously through the able-bodied athletics, I understood what it was to be beaten. So when Paralympic sports obviously opened up and I was allowed to do that from the age of 15, then I was like, oh, well, like, I'm competing against able-bodied people. I'm sure I can beat disabled people. That was my mentality again. It's like that focus. And then it took me to what I would say the next part of my career was fun to serious. Because up until I was age 15, and you will know from obviously being Northern Ireland's youngest international, whenever you step on over the line in an international vest, it's completely different to playing in the park or playing with your friends. So that's the mentality how it switched from being fun to being in a semi-way serious. And I'll future down my career, it kind of switched again with the mentality I had. But from them early ages, that's why I fell in love with it, was the fun part of it. And what it brought to me was the serious part, as I would say.
Yeah. And what did you know of Paralympic sport? And like, was there a clear pathway that you could see as in like an 11, 12-year-old who was starting to, win races and develop in that field?
To be perfectly honest, Paralympic sport was non-existent. I remember my dad just contacting Paralympics Ireland when I was 14 years of age, inquiring. I didn't know anything of it. He obviously seen the pathway. He had obviously grown up with a son with a disability. He wanted the best opportunities for me. He's seen my talents growing up and well, why wouldn't you want to go down that avenue? And I had never really thought of it because I didn't really consider myself with my friends that I was different in any way at that age. But whenever it was brought up to me, oh, do you want to go down and race? I didn't think anything. I was like, oh, we're going to race. That's fine. That's good. I'm all in for it. But I remember being down there and it was the national championships and there was like one other person in my race. And I was just like, what? This doesn't make sense because I'm going from 30 guys in a race to just one guy. And I'm just like, okay, well, there's able-bodied sport, here's Paralympic sport, and the difference is huge. And I remember competing in it and I said to myself, I'm going to beat this guy. I'm going to beat that, like this. And it's easy. And I came across the line second. I was like, oh God, that was a bit embarrassing. But like that, my mentality of an able-bodied child and an ignorant able-bodied child in terms of my mentality. And a lot of kids out there automatically say, oh, well, disabled people, I can't do anything. And that was the mentality I had at that time. And finished second. But then your guy just whipped out his Paralympic silver medal. And I seen it and Dad was like, that's who you're dealing with now. Then I was like, oh, right, okay. And he brought it and he showed me. And I was like, I don't want to touch it. Because straight away, after I had got told what time I had ran, and they were like, oh, well, you've qualified the time for the European Championships, age 15. I was kind of like, oh, okay, well, if I can go to European Championships now, 3 years' time's Beijing, I would love to win a gold medal.
So already you're thinking
it was weird. It was really, really weird. And I said to my dad, I don't want to touch it. I said at 15 I didn't want to touch his medal, and I didn't touch his medal. And it was just one of those moments where I was just like, okay, I've now started the ball rolling. And the performance director came down and introduced himself. He's like, if you want to go and get a standard for the 800 meters, there's another race across Dublin at the time.
So this was the 1500.
That was the 1500 meters. Yeah. And so I went across, and it was the blind sport competition that was happening on the other side. And he was like, well, you can just race within the partially sighted category. You'll get a race, you'll get an opportunity to run a time, and it gets you qualified. So I went across there. I ran a standard again. So I had 2 standards for those championships. And just like that, like life does give you opportunities if you go after it.
Yeah.
And it was thanks to my dad once again sourcing that and looking for opportunities for me. But on the same day, it so happened that Jason Smith, another Paralympic superstar from here, was competing in his first ever disabled visually impaired race.
Right, so he'd always ran able-bodied.
He had
as well.
ran able-bodied, and it so happened on the same day, me and him got found out on the same day. Not only is that, we're best friends. We had our whole careers together. We experienced everything together, and within a year and a half, we retired together. So it's such a crazy story to kind of say, well, we were found on the same day.
It's mental, isn't it?
And because obviously you can find people on the same day at the same events, but they don't go on to have careers like we did.
Yeah.
Or someone dips off and someone gets disinterested or whatever. But to have that generation togetherness and friendship was something I'll always remember. But we went to those European Championships, and then the ball started rolling. I finished second in the 8 and the 15. Obviously second was second loser or first loser, sorry. and Jason had won his 2 gold medals, so he became I didn't really know him. He was a golden boy. And will be known as the golden boy because he never got beat. But I looked at him and I was like, I want to be in the gold medal. And that was the mentality. And then it went from the guy as a 15-year-old boy at the national championships with a silver medal to then Jason at the gold medal. I was like, I've got one more year and I'm going to world championships the following year. And obviously as a teenager, you develop, you get stronger, you get better. So age 16, I went to world championships and I won my first world title at age 16. So that was where, again, life changed. I went from doing my GCSEs in the June, flunking, failing all them. Really, I wasn't very academic. Let's just say. So did that and went to World Championships. But it was after World Championships when you win a medal, a gold medal, people pay interest or take interest in you, and all of a sudden, Sport Ireland were then right. Well, we need to kind of give you a contract because you're winning gold medals. It's like discriminative if
they need to do something.
Funding.
Yeah.
So like at age 16, I think they awarded me like 16 grand for a year. And I was just like, wow. Like, well, if you were 16 years of age, what would you be doing? This was for training camps and this, but because I was so young, like not many 16-year-olds win more titles.
Yeah.
And Jason was 18 at that time, so he was slightly different. But at 16, like my parents were involved. Obviously, it's parental guidance for money and stuff. But they were like, well, you can have this and you can have that, and then, but they were giving me like £500 a month of like kind of like living costs. I was going like down the shops and just buying clothes and doing whatever. Like because I lived at home.
Yeah.
I didn't need anything. I was a teenage boy. I didn't need it. So I all of a sudden went wearing these nice clothes, nice shoes, bought what I wanted, did what I needed to do, and ran just like my mates would have done.
Yeah.
And I was no different. The only thing was I was getting a little bit of support and help. But then obviously it developed into, oh, right, okay, you're going to the Paralympic Games. And I always say when I'm 16,000 people at World Championships, and in Beijing I was running in front of 91,000 people. So that was the shift of, oh crap, right, you're in it seriously now. But age 18, after winning 2006, I was expected to win gold medals.
Yeah.
And that was the level. There was no going backwards anymore. And it was just like, right, you have to step up every single time.
And how did you deal with that?
The cool way I always look at it is I learned to lose in able-bodied sport.
Right.
So I always had the feeling, right, okay, well, I know what it feels like losing. I don't want that feeling. So when I go into Paralympic sport, I knew I was better than everybody else. So that was okay. But it was just like, right, I have to keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing. And going through my career, and not many people know this because it's never been really talked about, but my Paralympic records and my world records are not my fastest times. They're Paralympic races. They're nowhere near what I can run. So like my world record for the 1500 meters, for instance, in Paralympic sport is 3:59 for the 1500 meters. My able-bodied PB is 3:51. So if you put that margin in place, so I'm beating these guys with 3:59 by 10 seconds. But I've got a 8-second margin that I'm allowing myself to feel comfortable in. Yeah. And if I was to give you 8 seconds over 3.5 laps, you'll notice the difference.
Yeah.
It just allows you just to feel more relaxed, more comfortable. And maybe that's where my performance, I was able to excel. But the only thing I would always say now is I'm still running the times that people are now running, even though the Paralympic movement has advanced so much. Yeah. So I feel comfortable knowing that I'm leaving the sport still able to compete with the times that I ran when people were running 10 seconds slower than what I was doing. So it's a nice to know where my career was at that time, and it's nice to know that I would have been competitive. Do you know, sometimes like when a sport hasn't developed enough, people go, "Oh, you only won because there was less competition."
Yep.
But
I
I
can
know
run.
that I would have
On the
won,
marathon.
and I could potentially win now.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing I live off. It's kind of like justification to my own self, and justification to other people. It's like, well, I brought and I was speaking to one of my friends now, but my competitors who finished second to me for 10 years straight, every single time he finished, and he's like, you were the one that brought our sport to a new level, but it needed it. You kind of came in on the scene as a young boy and blew it out of the water and brought it to a new level to give that respect to Paralympic sport, because I think, and I'm sure you girls will agree, that people don't give female football the respect it deserves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I always have, and I always say it, and people would kind of, the justification of male sport isn't right to overpower female sport and disabled sport. I feel like I'm on a par with you girls than male sport, because we were discriminated against. We were looked down upon. We were not given equal opportunities, and it's exactly the same with the mentality of what sport brings. It's like I talked about. It's competing against the best people that are stepping on the starting line. It doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah.
And over years it will develop, and you can see that in WSL. And that's your justification, in my opinion, of you're getting more TV rights. You just now need to start to see the growth in terms of salaries and things like that. And growing up within Paralympic sport, Ireland, to be fair, we're very, very proactive. I was on the same funding. It's not classified as salary because we're not full-time.
Yeah.
But it was funding. I was on the same funding as able-bodied world champions and stuff. So that's where I felt like we were above other countries. We were ahead, forward thinking, and it allowed us to be full-time just like able-bodied people. And that sounds good, but those things weren't taken fully in terms of services. Like our national governing body, Athletics Ireland, didn't want to have anything to do with us in terms of a Paralympic athletics team up until this year.
Wow.
They did.
So they would
didn't
give you funding, but
So
Not the resources. Almost?
so Sport Ireland, the governing, or not the governing, but Sport Ireland as a corporation funded us.
Okay.
But our national governing body was Paralympics Ireland,
Oh,
because
okay,
Athletics
yeah.
Ireland
Oh, okay.
didn't want to be associated with Paralympic athletics.
right, okay.
I could say a lot of things about it that would
Yeah, I'm
probably
sure you
would
can, yeah.
annoy people or upset people or say it's not true, but off camera, if I told you, it would make sense.
Yeah.
But now looking at it, it's probably a good thing that people are going to take it to the next level, because what we need in Paralympic athletics is more coaches to be comfortable coaching disabled kids or disabled people, in terms of athletes knowing that they could go to their local athletics club and go, oh, I feel accepted, I
Yeah.
feel a part of it, because like for instance, like one of my friends, Alex Lee, he was a professional footballer down south, and he went in for a tackle. Something happened to his knee, and eventually it led to his amputation of his leg. But he then became a blade runner. But whenever obviously his process of rehabilitation and everything like that, he was a footballer. That was his love. That was like, he didn't know
Yeah.
anything else about anything else. And it was his wife who said, let's go to the track. Let's give you something to do. And he wouldn't get out of the car because he was embarrassed. But no one should be embarrassed of
Yeah.
who they are. It doesn't matter. You should be able to walk up to anyone and have an open, frank conversation and be a part of a group.
Yeah.
And there should never be someone to look down upon you and go, oh, you can't do it. Because everyone can do something. It can be adapted.
Yeah.
And that's why adaptation of life is always an important aspect, because when you really take the spine of what they're trying to achieve athletics, run 100 meters. Doesn't matter if you have 2 legs, no legs. It's exactly the same. So that's where I always say it doesn't matter if it's female football or male football. You're trying to do the same thing. You're trying to score a goal.
Objectives, yeah.
And having that right to perform at an elite level should be open to everyone. And thankfully nowadays you're starting to see it. Because
well, that's what I was going to ask. Like, what's the state of it now look like? You know, compare it to whenever you were growing up and the opportunities that weren't available for you. What's that like now for a young kid who maybe, you know, has the same things that you had growing up? What's that look like for them?
It's completely different. Like I said, before I went to those European Championships, I was taking on my first like Paralympic trip. And we went to Manchester and we competed in it was called the BT International. But I remember being handed a pair of football shorts and a woman's vest. Right? This is my first international. A pair of football shorts that had the logo. So it wasn't a pair of running shorts. It was just and a woman's vest. That, at the age of 15, my dad said, "You're not wearing that. You're wearing your club kit."
Yeah.
Because he felt embarrassed that...
Yeah.
That was how they were going to treat you straight away. But then he knew straight away that's where we needed to take things to the next level. We needed to make people aware. We needed to push the boundaries of, well, if you perform, people will take interest. So perform right, do the things right, treat it like you're an able-bodied person like I had done my whole career, and people will pay attention and then there'll be more interest. And even like, that was my first moment. Whereas now, people are getting like professional contracts. And they've won bronze medals at like European Championships. They haven't really gone. Where I would say people now in Paralympic sport, there's a lot to say. You can get a lot of sponsorship deals nowadays. They're not on the same level as able-bodied, and it's probably the same in female football. But like there's people winning bronze medals at European Championships. They're on global Puma contracts and loads of different things, and I'm just going, it's amazing, and I'm sure everyone will respect and understand, and it's crazy to say, and we always talk about it, I don't have a sexy disability. I'm not marketable, really. Even though I'm very successful, I was never marketable because I don't have an amputated arm or an amputated leg.
Right.
And for some people listening will not like that, but that's the reality.
Yeah.
Because on a billboard, marketing is impactful.
See it.
If you see it visually, they'll go, "Whoa, that's inspirational." You look at me, you probably met me today and looked at me and goes, "He's not disabled. What's wrong with him?" There's nothing wrong with it. And that's how I grew up my whole life. People just automatically go, "Did you injure your leg?" That's people's way of understanding my disability. I was like, no, that's just how I walk. And then nothing is talked about. Whereas nowadays, go, "So what happened to your leg?" And then I would go and talk about my disability.
Yeah.
Whereas I would have palmed it off at a young age. Oh, it's just how I walk. Because people were afraid to ask questions.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Like, when you're growing up and, you know, obviously you're diagnosed, like, as a kid, like, how did that impact you growing up?
Because obviously I stood out, I was different.
Yeah.
I walked with a limp. I didn't have access to my right hand. My hand sat like that. That's how my hand sat until about 6 years of age. And it was through the physiotherapy my parents have given me the fundamental use of my right hand, kind of in a way to look normal. So that was difficult in a way because you just want to fit in. You just want to be like everybody else. And I talked about it at the start of the podcast. It's about acceptance.
Yeah.
My parents always told me to be proud of who you are, be true to yourself, be the best version of yourself. I remember being bullied when I was in school because it was different, and a lot of kids or people that are listening to this at my age have probably experienced exactly the same. And I dealt with it in a way that I was going to use sport as how to shut them up. In a way, well, I might be disabled, I may look different, but that's what's going to keep me driving forward, because I'm going to have opportunities through my sport, because I may never have thought in my wildest dreams that I'd be traveling the world. But as a 14, 15, 16, I was getting to go to England to compete and run for my school and for my club. That's all I wanted. That's all I wanted to achieve. But it's at a young age, that's where I learned to accept who I was, understand that it was okay to be different, understand that everyone, even in this room, is different, and it's different for a reason. We all have positives, we all have negatives. It's about using your positives and learning from other people's positives. and making you a better person. And growing up, I feel like I would say I'm a well-rounded person, a respectful person, and an accepting person of who you are. It doesn't matter. But I had to learn. And I talked about being that ignorant 15-year-old, and I'd openly admit when I was 15, I was very awkward around disabled people, even though I was standing here as a disabled person.
But because of the way that your parents had always treated you, it felt like you weren't.
Yeah.
And then you didn't have the respect for the sport. And
I didn't have a respect for the sport or people.
Yeah.
And like I remember, like one of my good friends is in a wheelchair now, but like back in the day, I was just like, I have to. If someone came up with me in a wheelchair, I walked away. It's just that mentality, and I'm sure everyone has ever had it. Like if they walk past, it's easier to walk away from it because they might ask for help, or you
might say something wrong.
But that's down to education.
Yeah.
And today's society, it's getting better because it's more visual, and I talked about it. It's in your face more, but like in terms of parking spaces and stuff like that, people just don't care. And that's the honest truth. And like you see, like again, I talk about friends because I've met so many amazing friends, and like Claire Taggart, one of my good friends, she was able-bodied her whole life, got a condition. I don't know her full extent because she'll kill me for kind of talking about her, but she's now in a power chair, and like not mobile. She plays bocce. She's an international bocce player. Won European Championships, I believe. But like her abilities may be restricted, but she gets on with life. But people put her in a box.
Yeah.
Whereas she's in the institute, she's respected and treated like an elite athlete because she's competing in a Paralympic sport. But like we always have the Christmas night out and stuff. She comes with us on a Christmas night out.
Yeah.
Like we're in the middle of the, what do you call it? Is it Thirsty Goat?
Yeah.
We were in the middle in the beer garden. Power chairs are quite big. And us and 5 other people are around her and like having the crack and enjoying it. Whereas people will be looking at and staring at us, and I'm just like, she's human. Like she's
absolutely.
She's like she's just in a wheelchair. So and I think that when you put that in people's perspectives and in life nowadays, it's a lot different to what it used to be. And I'll openly admit that I was one of them people, and I'm sure a lot of people will say the same if they're open and frank with themselves.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you. And I think the thing you said about education, and I think it's something that is improving but still has such a long way to go with it. And I think what fascinates me so much about yourself is your mentality, even from such a young age. And would you say that you got that from your parents?
Yeah, I think because I used to talk about it, the acceptance code I use, there's 2 primary choices in life. You accept the conditions as they exist or accept the responsibility for changing them. That's my parents. Because when I had 2 years and 10 months, my parents got told, your son has a disability. Like I used the clicking of the fingers. That's the truth. Their life changed forever.
Yeah.
They couldn't hand me back and go, he's broke. I want a new one. Like we need a new one.
Yes,
That was their life now. They couldn't walk away from it. They couldn't go. I think they had to take me to physiotherapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. So it was in their hands. They had the responsibility of their child. And yes, that's probably where the mentalities came from. It's my parents, because I look at what they have got me to today, and they still impact me in my life and giving me opportunities. And it's always a learning curve, but the attitudes that they had as young parents is what I would love to have if I'm blessed enough and lucky enough to have kids in the future, that I could potentially bring a child up in the way they did with me. And I would say that they would be better off humans than I was growing up as a teenager, because I've learned so much around the world from so many different amazing people that the attitude you have in life is important to how other people perceive you. And I think for me, I learn from sport now more than everyday life because that's what I feel passionate about. So as soon as I got contacted about doing this, you go away and you do your research. You go and find out about used to, and you pay more interest. Like Aston Villa were playing Chelsea yesterday. I made sure that I watched that game. But it's funny because things in life happen for a reason and opportunities arise because of it. And I'm interested in football. So obviously, I use her example, Jordan Heidema, the Alphonso Davies' ex-girlfriend. Like, everyone called her Alphonso Davies' girlfriend.
Yeah.
She's a Canadian international that is played for PSG, like was a superstar in her own right, but people don't give her the respect. Like, but she's sports stars. But I would say the one thing in athletics in general, females are now starting to become more face value in terms of respected because their achievements, because they lost Usain Bolt, I think, as well, for my own personal sport. There's new, like Cindy McLaughlin, who's an incredible athlete who takes her event to the next level. And she's a superstar in her own right, and people are now respecting that. And that's, I think I have a passion for female sport than male sport because, like I talked about earlier, because there's a real sense of equality between disabled and female sport and rising up. And over the years I've seen it because another person you've probably seen is Katie Taylor, where she's taken female boxing as a different level again. And obviously the attitudes, I don't know, here's a question for you. How do you feel the attitude of female football in Northern Ireland has changed now since you've came back from the major championships?
Yeah, well, it's like you said earlier, you had to be successful in order to have eyes on you, in order to have, then you were given support. It wasn't like you haven't achieved anything, but we're going to believe in you anyway that you possibly could. It was like you have to have that success first, and then we'll maybe take a look at it.
It's funny because a prime example would be the female hockey team.
Yeah.
Again, like they went to World Championships, ranked like 10th in the world, finished second in the final. And then all of a sudden they get loads of money thrown at them, going, "Oh, we're going to take you to the next level." But obviously, and they won many matches on either penalties or shootouts or anything. So again, they worked really hard to get to that point, and people automatically go, "Oh, well, it was luck. It was penalties." So that's but they had to get the penalties to get them opportunities, so they deserve with everything that they get. But then all of a sudden it dips, and the interest, and this is where male sports will never lose the interest. Never lose interest. Whereas as soon as Northern Ireland ladies don't do well again, we're off the fin of the earth.
Yeah.
And it's the same with Paralympic sport. As soon as Paralympic Games happens every 4 years, I'm in the media for that. You don't see me until then the following year I'm at a World Championship. So I have to win a world title to get any interest at all. But that was for years and years and years. And then people then started going, actually, well, we see Michael as a more regular person. I get invited to some events. I become an ambassador for golf events and seen as an equal. And I think a lot of people, like in BBC, the football community, like Liam Beckett and people like that, have been really nice to me because he sees me as first and foremost, a man to man, and he's really respectful and is interested in me. But he gets me out and gets me in front of the camera and always pushes me to other people and talks about that. But that's it takes very special people to give the respect that you that you deserve, but you haven't earned. You shouldn't have to earn it to deserve it.
I feel like we're in like a constant state of always having to prove ourselves. Like
100%.
It's like for years, and it's probably similar to yourself in your sport. Like no one cared if we had a match or a competition, and it was almost like we were trying to tell the world that we were playing these games. But we're lucky if it made the last line in a newspaper, you know. Whereas all of a sudden you get a little bit of success, and everybody jumps on the bandwagon then. And, like, is that sustainable? Or, like you say...
realistically, female sport, unless you go to a World Cup, the probability of your interest is going to reduce. But I remember last year, was it, whenever you had the crowd of people, you're playing England in England,
Yeah.
and the crowd of people that went to that match, I'm just like, how many people are going to be there in 2 years' time
Yeah.
or 3 years' time?
But that's where we are now, and that's kind of like, right, I want this every time we play a match.
Yeah.
Every time we play
But
a
it's
match.
possible because if Lionesses can do it, I know there's a lot more money and there's a lot more sport, and they have obviously had more success. So,
Yeah.
but from little acorns grow, and I always say that Paralympic sport started with having a female vest and a blue pair of shorts. It didn't even match to now running in front of 90,000 people, being on TV. You're starting to see people be in TV shows alongside able-bodied people. Like I did Ultimate Hell Week on RTE. I was the first disabled person to be given an opportunity to be a part of that show.
Yeah.
I was never going to finish it because my disability was always going to probably catch up on me because of the impairment I had. But they give me the opportunity to try.
Yeah.
And I always say, if you never try, you'll never know.
You'll never know.
It's one of them things you look upon opportunities, and I think you girls getting opportunities is more as important. It is obviously people with disabilities as well, but I always have that feeling of what's coming for sport in Northern Ireland female. Like, I think it's the first ever female sports awards happening in Belfast during the week.
Yeah,
I think.
Friday there.
And like Julie Nelson won like
Julie, she'll love that.
but it's funny, I was saying, like, I grew up with Julie, like, in terms of knowing Julie. She worked in Jordanstown University, and my parents said you have to work 1 day a week. So I worked in there 1 day a week, just to kind of get a sense of, right, okay, this is what it means to make £50 for a day's work. And you're not just walking out to the shops and buying a pair of trainers just because you have the money. But like, there's so many people that we connections with, like Rebecca Corish, who used to play for Northern Ireland underage level, and it was obviously has still that passion for it as well. But like, these are the people that I have a connection with, and that's where maybe again where I have a more mutual respect, because she Julie played Everton and played for Glasgow United or
Glasgow City.
And like, Glasgow City, it doesn't exist in male football. You know what I mean? So again, I always said, Julie, you don't get any respect at all. Like, growing up, and I think she was in an era where she probably didn't get the respect.
No.
Because she's now, is she retired yet? Or is she retired?
Oh, no. Cut that. We'll have to start again.
No, because I'd seen her coaching, because she was away coaching with under 17.
Yes.
So I think she must be doing her coach's badge.
Yes.
She's doing what Jack is doing. Yeah, no, you know, still in her prime. Yeah, still in her prime. No, but like, these are the people that I think again brings connection full circle.
Yeah.
So you asked me to come on here, I can talk about people that I grew up with within female football, and yeah, it's quite nice to have that opportunity.
And did you always feel right from the get-go that you had that responsibility to raise the level of the sport, or was it only in your later years when you realised what that was actually doing, the impact it was having? Yeah,
I think the right word is the impact. The impact that I was having at an early age, I didn't see it. People always go, oh, you're an inspiration, Disabled people hate being called inspirations. Like, that's that's not the truth, because we shouldn't be an inspiration. Like Claire Taggart, for instance, you see, I'm not even going to use that word. See, if you use that word in front of her, she got angry. She shouted at me in a Q&A like this in front of a crowd. So, but that's the attitude like we have. It's one of them things. But the impact our lives are having are changing, not in terms of everybody's today life, but it's the kid that's sitting at home in a wheelchair. Yeah, it's the kid that's walking with a wonky leg, or the gimpy leg, as I call it. And I was known as Super Gimp growing up. I know it's not very accepted in the world. Enda Smith, you that's the person but that's how I was known. But that's who I am, and I think I like just going over a bad of that. But it's just one of them things. It's the impact of trying to normalize a disability, and seeing it for what it is, rather than going, oh God, you got a disability, and making a whole big hullabaloo out of it. Because there's more opportunities out there that kids deserve to have and be a part of, and the impact that I've had and being sitting invited on these podcasts will also help as well, because I always say I'm disabled and I was disabled from birth, and it's sorry to say, but like, you could wake up disabled tomorrow.
Yeah.
Your life could be impacted, and you could want to have my life,
Yeah.
be a part of my life. And if the more opportunities and the more it's talked about, well, then it's more normalized. And it's same again, anyone that has kids, you could have a kid that's disabled, and that's out of your control.
Yeah.
And you have no control in that. And the more, that's why I think it has to be taken more serious, and that's where we're getting to. We're getting to the stage where, okay, it's normalized, but that's the whole truth. Because like I talked about my friend losing his leg, another one of my teammates, he hit a tree driving, and he's from there down. He doesn't feel anything.
Yeah.
And but he's a Paralympic champion I can't even remember. It's cycling. Yeah, but I didn't even know the sport. But it just goes to show the impact it can have in everyday's life, and the power it has, and the opportunities that it can have from birth or from tomorrow.
Yeah.
And do you think that there is being a shift, with mentalities from everybody else?
There has been, but there's so much. But I'll also admit and say Paralympic sport will never be on par of able-bodied sport. Will never, because it will never always be. It'll never be an equal, because people will automatically go, well, your times are not matches as Usain Bolt.
Comparison.
Yeah.
You're like, the people will turn around and goes, well, you're not as skillful as a male.
Yeah.
We're not as fast. We're
Or
not
you're
as
not-
strong.
Yeah.
But
Game's
that's-
slow.
But the
yeah.
thing with it is, females are naturally.
It's its own entity.
That's,
Yes,
and it has
yes.
to stand alone.
You should. That's the word I was looking for. Your own identity, and it's the same as Paralympic sport. We're in categories of disabilities. That's what we should be seen upon. We shouldn't be seen on.
Shouldn't be compared.
You're an 800
yes.
meter runner, so if you're not running 1:43, then you're not good enough to be seen as a world champion.
Yeah.
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 And I think that's always going to be there, and unfortunately, that will never change. Because, it'll get better, it'll improve, but it'll never be on par. And I see that as an able-bodied person head on my head, and I also see the impact it has a disabled person on my head. Because I was always brought up, I was getting the funding like an able-bodied person, but my dad coached able-bodied athletes, and he said, if you don't train hard enough, think of the other people that are actually training harder than you and getting paid nothing. That was also a thing that I got told growing up. It was just like, you may be 18, you may be a Paralympic champion, but if you don't train and focus like you should deserve to be getting paid this money, think of the other people that are getting nothing. And that was what always kept me focused.
Kept you focused.
And giving me that attitude of, right, okay, well, I have to be respectful to the sport that I'm a part of. And I'm very blessed and lucky that I had such a successful career. And it was all down to other people. And it just goes to show the impact other people have in your lives. And hopefully I've impacted or spoken in a way that allow someone else to grow and expand their thought pattern, or meet new people, or connecting in a certain way that'll allow them to take their lives to the next level. And that's all I try and do.
I want to kind of know just about an Olympic Games experience, like what that felt like for the first time in 2008. Like, you'd literally gone from, like you said, a local race with two people racing in front of nobody, and then you go in onto that stage.
If I show you the photo, like the video of my race, like when I run free. And I know it sounds kind of ridiculous, but see the build up to that. I'm a very bad mental. I've struggled with my mental health my whole life, but like I get nervous, very nervous, and I build things up on my head to the point where I'm just like, when you do it, you're like, why was I so worried about it?
It's so
Yeah.
But that's
extreme.
just how
Yeah.
how my brain works, and I've learned to accept that. But in 2008, I'm standing on the starting line, and I said in a BBC interview, and I actually had to apologise. It's quite funny. I just said I'm crapping myself. I was crapping myself on the starting line, and but I really was. I was the night before. I couldn't sleep. My dad was in the village at the time. He was staying in a hotel on the outside. And I woke up and I went down, and the performance director was in the basement of our building in the village. And he rang my dad, and he was just like, get in here now. Because I was white. I didn't sleep a wink. I was just up all night. I just literally couldn't focus. Because as crazy as it sounds, all I could think of was, what if I lost?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was putting so much pressure on
Yes,
myself
on yourself. Yeah.
that at the age of 18, I was like, if I lost, it was the end of the world.
Yeah.
And whenever it was now in a position where, right, running in front of this stadium is now what my expectations is for the rest of my life. And that's what I have to live up to. And that was where my life really, truly, the mentality of that all changed from being just in front of those 16,000 people, 90,000 people, and the attitude you had to switch upon.
Yeah. And you did win.
Win.
In
Yeah,
Beijing?
yeah. I did win.
8 and 15.
In Beijing, it was 8.
Just did 8.
And London was both.
Yep.
Rio was 15 and Tokyo was an absolute shambles. But,
Okay.
I wouldn't even classify it as a race, but it's an experience that I'll never forget. It was funny up until I think 2 weeks ago. The guy that actually won my race in Tokyo, he put up a video of the race and him come down. I was like, oh, is that how the race finished? Because I was 150 meters away up the home straight because I'd never seen the race before. Because ordinarily I would have went back and watched races like everyone does. You watch football matches.
Yeah.
But I've never seen that race. Never, like, because obviously I wasn't in it, so there's no point in me watching it. And it was a real funny moment going, actually, that's how you won that race. Oh, right, okay, is that how it panned out? And it was actually a really good race. I just, unfortunately, wasn't in it. Well, in the mix of it.
Yeah.
But my 4 experiences of Paralympic Games have all been different.
Yeah.
Beijing was a shock to the system. London was where it was at. I
Yeah.
was in my prime. I was 22 years of age.
And you're so close to
I
home.
was so
and-
close to home. I ran in front of my mum for the first ever time at a major championships. She presented me with a gold medal.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
First parent to ever present their child with an Olympic or Paralympic gold medal. Like that, it's never happened since. Like
Yeah.
these are the
Yeah.
things that I look back in my career and go, London was the shit. It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
it was the thing, and it was because it was so accepted in the UK, and I think they're ahead of everyone else in the world with the acceptance of Paralympic sport.
It's not often we say that.
No,
no,
that's
it's
so
not.
true. We're so
It's not.
behind in so many things.
So many
but-
different things. But they accepted it, give us opportunities, full stadiums, everyone loved it. You went to Rio and it was like we've went back
Yeah.
kind of 2 years and we kind of didn't have many people in the stadium. It was ironic, like they eventually ended up having to just give away free tickets.
Right, okay.
But it was weird because it was in the middle of Rio. It was favelas around you. Like there was not much money for people to go and watch. Even though I ran in front of very little people, I ran in front of more people than Mo Farah did whenever he won his Olympic gold medal in Rio.
Oh, well.
So because the Olympics price pointed way out.
Okay,
So
right, yeah.
whenever it came around to the Paralympic Games, they were like, we just want people in the stadium. Let's go.
Yeah,
Everyone
yeah.
can come in,
Have
just
at it.
watch it,
Let's
and
go.
give you an atmosphere. And that's all athletes ever want.
Yeah.
All you want is to
Oh,
be.
yeah.
It doesn't matter who pays a ticket or who has, because
Or who
all you
doesn't
want
pay,
to play in
just
front,
thumbs
make
up
noise,
seats, yeah.
make noise, be a part of making an atmosphere, and it'll give you that bit of a lift. And then you go to Tokyo and there's no one in the stadium because of COVID. And again, that's another experience.
Yeah.
And it's one of them ones that you kind of look back upon and go, right, I'll never forget that because it was such an odd scenario.
Yeah.
But I'm just glad that I got to experience it because that's what I wanted to achieve. I wanted to go to 4 Paralympic Games.
Yes.
It may have not went my way, and I laugh at it now because
And did you know going in did you have in the back of your mind that this probably wasn't going to go your way, or did you still
the
fully
only
know?
thing was I thought I was going to win a medal.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't because they changed the category. So I'm a T37 category,
Mm-hmm.
which is the second mildest class of my disability, and they connected both of ours together, and which the impairment athlete, the people above were less impaired.
Yeah.
So it put me at a lower chance of winning, which was obviously unfair in my head, but I didn't, like I talked about it as a young age, I never used that as an excuse. So I just got myself into as much best shape as possible. The extra year probably helped me in a way. And I remember doing a workout 1 week exactly. We do dry runs, so it's just like anyone. The exact time a week out, the exact clothes that I was going to wear, the shoes, the socks, everything. And And I remember doing the session, and it was one of the best sessions I'd done in years. And I was just like, oh yeah, I'm on this.
Yeah.
Do you know whenever you find that sweet spot? You're just
Yeah,
like, I'm on it. This is good. And I remember doing my warm up, felt great. Call room, everything grand, get through it, because sometimes you lose in the call room. As funny or weird that sounds. And I just remember getting out and getting on the track. And my dad screenshotted a photo of me on the start line, and I was a ghost.
Right.
Genuinely, I was
Yeah.
not in the stadium. I was not there. And I think genuinely, like, my uncle passed away 2 years or a year or so prior to it. And I have never admitted it, but I think his last words to me, I'll be on your shoulder in Tokyo. And that's what I thought about. Not
wow.
what I needed to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's what I thought about. Even though, like, I got a tattoo. He's on my shoulder now.
Really?
Oh.
So, like, that's one thing I look back now and go, that's where I messed up.
Yeah.
I'd done every single thing right to that point, and it's not an excuse, but I allowed myself to
You can
get
get too
emotionally
emotional.
engaged.
And,
Yeah.
I didn't focus on autopilot. I was ready. I knew exactly what I had to do. My dad had planned. It's like you're given a team talk and you're told you have to do this on the pitch. If you don't do it, the manager can't really do anything.
Yeah.
No way. Like, my dad had given me exact instructions
Yeah.
to follow, to who, to where to go, what pace to hit. And after 400 meters, I was gone. I was emotionally drained,
Yeah.
but that was my fault. And I openly admit it was my fault, but it's a learning experience, so that if I ever had the opportunity to go into coaching, which I hope to do with my dad in the near future, that I can educate people. If they were ever in a scenario where they're starting to feel emotional on a start line, or they're in this,
Yeah.
to, like, actually just take a step
How
back,
to manage it.
go
yeah.
get out of the circle, think of the bigger picture, and then go back into that circle, refocused, realigned, and go again. But for me, Paralympic Games were what I will always remember about my career, but in terms of a sporting thing. But the one thing I'll always remember of it is the people that I've met during my career. I've met some of the best people ever from walks of life that I never would have
Yeah, but
crossed paths with. Like, it's incredible the opportunities I've been blessed and lucky enough to have, and I hope and pray that people that are coming behind me get equal or better, because I don't want to be jealous of other people. Oh, I would love to have had that when I was it.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
you never
I know.
want that, because obviously you
Yeah.
look back, you were like, I would love that contract, I would love this, I would love
Yeah.
that. But I was lucky enough, because I was quite good, that I got contracts that people probably looked upon as, oh God, how's he got a contract? He's disabled. But I was blessed and lucky enough to have that. But I just want for everyone to be given the right to equal opportunities in sport, life, anything that they do, and that's one thing I'll always take away from my sporting career.
Yeah.
And we typically, to wrap up the podcast, we're asking all of our sporting stars to pick one. What would be your ultimate career highlight? What would you pick?
My mum presented me a gold medal.
Yeah, I knew as soon as you
Without-
said,
Time, yeah.
I knew as soon as you said that one, I was like, I bet you that's it.
Without a shadow of a doubt, the best 10 seconds I'll ever spend with my mum.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And I get emotional talking about it. When I deliver my motivational talks, I speak business and I corporate and talks and stuff. But as soon as I talk about that, I have not everyone in tears, but a lot of people in tears, because it's, when I talk about my story, my mum was there when she gave birth to me. She was there when I fell downstairs and brought to the doctors. She was there whenever I was diagnosed. She gave up work to bring me to the physiotherapy and all that stuff. And she was there all through my hard times, kind of running, coming last, coming first, all that sort of stuff. And then she was there when I won a Paralympic gold medal. And that's a full circle.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was just the final piece in the memory of running. And yeah, 2012, 1500 meters medal ceremony will be the highlight of my career, bar none.
Oh, wow.
Michael, thank you so much. First and foremost, for being so open and honest, and really just speaking so vulnerably about all your experiences. And there's so much to take away from it. But like, just the power of what sport can do for people is the biggest takeaway, and what it can teach you, like within sport, but also outside of it as well. And I hope loads of people take stuff away from this and are more educated walking away from it, because I know that
100%.
I definitely am.
Yeah, that's what life it is.
Yeah.
You learn every day, and everyone, it's a cliche thing, you learn every day, but you do. I've got to meet yous, and I've learned more about yous, and that's the incredible thing about life. It's being able to learn from one another to make better people, and that's truly what I've done today. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Yes.